for you. So this is our end of year wrap up for 2022 and lead into 2023. I've been excited about this episode for a week because the panel that we have is absolutely amazing. And I'm going to have them all introduce themselves. But if you've been around Real Geeks for a while, you'll know these guys as the OGs. All of the episodes that they have done for Keeping It Real have all been like, basically, this is our like top 5 crew right here. So I'm really excited. We're going to dive right in. Greg, for people that don't know you somehow, you're right at the top of my screen. So why don't you get started, introduce yourself?
Yeah, well, I'm Greg Harrelson. I've been in real estate for about 27 years. I'm a Real Geeks OG for sure. I was probably one of the original, probably one of the first 10 to 15 websites that existed when Jeff Manson was building it early on. And I'm located in South Carolina. I focus on Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, Greenville, Columbia, Charleston, Spartanburg, Wilmington, North Carolina. So my goal and my vision is market share in the entire Carolinas. So we'll just start with there, and then we'll see exactly where everyone wants to go on this podcast.
Excellent. All right, Brendan, up next.
Yeah, so Brendan Bartic, and I'm here with Real Geeks because of Greg. And so I was he's the OG of OGs, I think. So learned so much from him, and he kind of changed my entire way of looking at brokerage structure or team structure, data structure, and got me into Infusionsoft and did that whole journey. And I mean, so many things. So Greg, first of all, thank you. I wouldn't be here without you. And we were just laughing. One of his not ex-agents, one of his agents moved across the country, and now he's with us, and he's successful here, and we're really happy about it. So thank you for that as well. I owe you quite a bit, so we should send you something. But yeah, no. Other than that, we are in the Denver Metro Front Range, so anything from Colorado Springs to Fort Collins, and our goal is to. We just changed our brand. We were the Bartic Group for years, and now we've created a new kind of national company called Elite Home Partners, and now we're excited to hopefully come to a town near you, except for wherever these 3 are located. We'll go to any other town but there. That's who we are.
Excellent. All right, next up, Bob.
Hey everyone, I'm Bob McCranie with Texas Pride Realty Group. We are in the Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, and East Texas markets. And I've been in real estate since 2003, run my company since 2009. I think I moved over to Real Geeks in like 2015 or 16. I don't know the exact date. I have to go double check everything. And I'm just so happy to be here with all of y'all.
All right. Last but not least, Lisa.
So I'm Lisa Chinatti. I guess I'm the newest in the group. I've been in real estate and with Real Geeks probably realistically since 2015, maybe 2016. We are in Greater Boston and Southern New Hampshire, broker owner of Chinatti Realty.
Sounds great. All right, so let's get into it. Maybe point of housekeeping, this episode is being pre-recorded and then live streamed everywhere. So normally we take questions and let people kind of engage as we're going. Unfortunately, we won't be able to do that this time. But if you do have questions, definitely leave them in the chats and in the comments, and we'll come back and answer as many of them as we can. But like I said, this is a recap of 2022 and then lead into 2023. So let's start by setting the stage. Like first half of 2022, like the market looked very different. Who wants to start us off with like where they were at and what kind of awesome results they were seeing?
Sure. Yeah. So 2022, beginning of 2022, I was probably scratching my head saying, like, this market is absurd. This doesn't make any sense. This market should be going down, but it's going up. It's on fire. Our agents are upset because they can't get their offers, can't win the bids, all that stuff was going on, at the beginning of 2022. And I think everyone that's listening knows that, but I started by saying I was scratching my head because it was too hot. And I've seen multiple cycles. And what I was concerned about is this is too hot. And I think about my kids and I think about when they're on a sugar high. I kind of know I don't know how it works chemically or physically, but I actually do know what comes after a sugar high. I've experienced that before with my children. So I was
Yeah,
thinking about that in the beginning of 2022. It's like, this is too good. It's too hot.
excellent. So one of the things I like about this panel is we have good geographic dispersion, but we also have like a variety of different marketing styles. And so, Bob, I know you're kind of like the SEO digital like expert. And so, thinking about like early 2022, and I want to get into a little bit later, like how your stats have, changed if they have. What were you seeing? What was the state of the market?
So I have spreadsheets for everything because I'm non-analytical and I have a chart to prove it. In first and second quarter of 22, the Dallas-Fort Worth market was on par with 2019. So our sales, I track new listings and I track sales. I also track leases, but leases aren't important to what we're doing right now. So we were on par with 2019. And then towards the last 2 quarters of the year, obviously last quarter isn't finished yet, we are trending lower than any of the last 7 years I've been tracking for sales. So obviously the interest rates, I think, kicked us all in the gut. And the market shifted then, and we were, we've gone from an extreme seller's market to a pretty strong buyer's market. A lot of the sellers right now are in shock. Like, why can't I sell my house in 3 seconds? My brother did it last year. Well, your brother was smarter than you. He sold during the height, not, after we told you it would crest. To Greg's point, I think we all knew things were going too hot for a while and that they would have to correct. That said, we're not in a crash. We're just not in that hot market. We have 2 to 3 months of supply here. And before we had less than a month of supply.
Yeah, I think here, I mean, what really amazed us is we're in probably what I think is the most dangerous market for real estate agents, which is a balanced market. So like when we look at all the graphs and charts, it's like right in the middle. So sellers are like, well, I'm not going to move. Buyers are like, well, I'm going to wait. And so I'm just like, I want it to tip to one side or the other, because when it's a buyer's market, then we know how to react in that. But when everybody's kind of frozen, it's this. And then you're seeing all of the propaganda about mortgage rates, and you can do this. And every agent right now is telling the buyers that we're desperate and you should do something because rates are still okay. And I'm seeing that message go out. So if I was a buyer in the market, I'd be seeing all of these messages going, you're fine, you should still buy, you should still buy. And I'd be like, if everybody's telling me to do that, maybe there's something weird going on. So I just think it's a frozen time that makes it a little bit tricky. But from everything we can see, February, March, it'll tip more towards the buy side, and then sellers are going to have this awakening that goes, I've got to do something, otherwise it's going to get worse. It's going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so Lisa, I know the Boston market is also another one of those super hot bonkers markets. So tell us, what was happening in 2022, and then how's it been shifting?
Yeah, so it's been interesting, right? I think much like all of these guys, we started off pretty hot into the year, but knowing that it was too hot to last. So a lot of what we were doing was what we thought was preparing for it, right? And I think much like Bob, my business is very heavily built off of online lead generation. And so we really felt it in October, was the hardest hit month for us. I think it was a culmination of the leads that had been decreasing over the early portion of the year, coupled with the interest rates that went up pretty instantaneously. But what we're seeing, which sounds a little bit different from these guys, and we cover downtown Boston, which is its own unique market, all the way out into the suburbs, which are reacting very differently than Boston itself. So in Boston proper, I'd actually say most of the zip codes within Boston are a balanced market. But in the suburbs, we're finding that it's still honestly a seller's market. We're still in multiple offer territory. Pricing is more important than it was, or that it has been for the past couple of years. Marketing is becoming a little bit more important to making those kind of things happening, and to preparing our sellers, to making sure that they're doing the things that we know they need to do to their home to present it really well. But when marketed properly with a great price and in good condition, we're still seeing 5 to 10 offers on those properties in the suburbs. In the city, we could be looking at 90 days on market. So two very different markets brewing.
You know, I think it's what Lisa said is so important for the audience to understand, and that is, and Bob used the word crash, right? We're not crashing. And when we think about crashing, we think about, at least me, I think about 2008 and 7, 9, when there was crashing, right? And the crash, we look at the sales prices, the equity that people that had in their properties, it pretty much crashed. So we're not seeing that right now, but we are crashing in a different way. The amount of revenue and income that real estate agents are making is crashed. See, like in my market, prices have remained pretty stable, but there's 40% less transactions. The consumer doesn't care if the market's actually has 40% less commission checks. That's a real estate agent that cares about that. So we couldn't be in a market that's not necessarily crashing, but could be devastating for the real estate agent. The last crash was devastating for the sellers. So just want to kind of throw that out there.
That is a great point. I want to come back to that. Lisa, you had mentioned that you get a lot of online leads and that it started to change in October. Is that when you started noticing a shift in the lead generation, or was it before then? And then, like, what other KPIs were you looking at to kind of say, like, hey, there's something out there?
So we actually saw the decrease hit in about June when we saw the leads go down. And I think it's interesting because again, being probably the newest one to the business out of this group, I made a mistake in my own business and saw the decrease happening, but didn't replace it quick enough to avoid the impact. So we felt the impact in October, which is, it makes sense, right? It's typically that like 120 to 180 days to convert a lead. So the decrease in lead volume in June, we felt most heavily in October. We've righted the ship since then in a bunch of different ways, but that was when we felt it. And it was a decrease in lead volume was the biggest aspect of it. The crazy interesting part, and I'm sure Bob and maybe all of these guys can kind of speak to the same thing right now, is that while transactions are down, lead volume is down. What I'll say is that the quality of the lead and the intent of the consumer is at an all-time high. So our conversion rate has gone up by a good chunk, and we're doing more with less. And I think for the agents that are making the pivot, both on the scripting side, on the lead generating side, and some of the other stuff, I actually think that they don't necessarily take the hit in the income. I've got a good chunk of mine that are feeling the pain, but I've got a really big percentage that are setting themselves up to win big right now.
So to Lisa's point, June, I got all my stats up here. June and October were the lowest number of paid leads that we got in. But exactly, you nailed it. You said those 2 months, and I looked at my graph and I went, yeah, damn right. We're exactly June and October. Sorry, I shouldn't cuss. June and October were the lowest paid leads coming in. Now, we do a lot of organic. Our organic pulled us through. When you're talking about riding the ship and changing course a little bit, we had that extra lead source of our organic kicking in and helping us not go down so far. But you've got to have those extra pillars built into your business, which Lisa is obviously amazing at and will be great with. I think part of it's seasonal, but I think a lot of it is the interest rates. The 2 months that they announced the huge interest rates, the number of people coming onto our sites looking for houses went down.
So maybe, Brendan, I want to get your take on all of this, but the other thing I want to throw out there, since Lisa brought up lead quality, and I know this is like I'm kind of teeing up Greg to look like Nostradamus here, but what was changing in terms of like the conversations or the intent behind those leads? So Brendan, I'll let you take like whichever part of that you want to take a bite out of.
Yeah, well, I think it was two things. I think we had to re-look at how we were going to serve the client. So for us back in January, we knew this was coming as well. I mean, we usually look at any real estate cycle being a 10-year cycle and felt like this was 3 years overdue for the cycle. So we were preparing for it. And what we said to ourselves is we said, okay, well, we know that once this starts to shift, then we're going to have more expireds again. We're going to have more for sale by owners needing us. But we've kind of heard the same old pitch. So what, besides of the leads we get, what is going to be our unique, differentiator that we're going to use to like make sure people go, hey, we're something special. So we started working on programs just as much as we did leads. And those programs have turned out to be our savior. I mean, we're doing more production now than we did last year, in these same months. And I think it was just because we served a need that wasn't there, that our competitions weren't prepared for.
Okay, so I love that. I want you to dig in a little bit. Behind me, you can't see it; it's all nicely blurred out. But there's a book called Differentiate or Die, which is basically going to talk exactly that classic marketing. Like figure out how to make yourself different. So what? And I think Lisa was touching on this a little bit. Talking about marketing, in the suburbs and stuff like that. But Brendan, what were you doing to set yourself apart from the competition in that changing market?
Yeah, well, we knew that sellers were getting nervous and days on market were starting to increase. And for the first time, you could see sellers even being like wanting to cancel with their agent after a month because they felt that like it used to be like 120 days was kind of that realm, or even 90. And now they're like, if you don't have my house sold in 30 days, I'm out of here, right? So we looked at a program that we modeled off of saying, okay, well, how do you create buyer urgency? And how do you create this feel that homes will sell? So we created a program called Sold in 65, and it's a 65-hour program where I looked at the listing process and kind of flipped it on its head. And we modeled after some agents in Australia, which sounds really interesting. We did some modeling after some other agents across the country, and we created a 65-hour or a 65-hour listing process, 24 hours on Saturday, 24 hours on Sunday. And then by 5 p.m. on Monday, that if we did this process, you wouldn't have to face this. And a large piece of the process is the strategy, but of course it's getting into the mind of a seller that you have to create an initial asking price that is appealing enough to drive a frenzy, right? To create a frenzy. And once they understand that, we had several of our agents that used the program, and we were getting $50,000 over asking. We just did one last week, $71,000 over asking. That wasn't expired. And so we had these stories that we could tell, and now we can share those, and it kind of went from there. So that was on the sell side. And then on the buy side, developing programs of, okay, well, what's the buyer's objections and how can I pre-block those objections? So we started thinking of buyer buyback programs, right? So how can I do a buyer guarantee where you can buy from us, and if you're not 100% happy or satisfied, we'll buy your home in 60 days or sell it for free. So those are just, and I can go and, but so just trying to think about what's the real problem, and then going back to the whiteboard and getting on that whiteboard and going, okay, we've got to provide a solution, because every other agent was just going, oh, not these people, but right, not these legends, but other people were just kind of going, I don't know, like, let's just keep doing the same old thing. So I think when the market changed, I remember when it, you used to see billboards all the time, sell your home in 60 days or I'll buy it, right? Like you used to, there'd always be 2 or 3 of them. And then those went away, right? Because we were like, well, my house will sell in 6 hours or 6 days, right? So I don't need that. So I think programs, and some people might call them gimmicks, separate you from the others and give your agent population a tool to go and feel confident that I have some secret sauce that somebody else doesn't have. And so that just made them excited to get on the phones. It made them excited to do this because they didn't feel like they were just getting punched in the face with the markets come to a dead stop. So
very nice. I love that. So Lisa, you were talking a little bit about some of the marketing and other ways that you were dealing with it in sort of your different flavors of the Boston market. What have you been implementing?
Well, I think that's actually some really great points. I think there's two parts to it to look at, right? One is the scripting that we're working on with buyers, and the hard push of you have to show up today, you have to have your pre-approval ready to go, you have to be prepared to write an offer on the spot. Those days are done, right? Pushing, waiving inspections, waiving appraisals, and doing everything possible to get an offer accepted. It's going to lose you the buyer all day, every day, right? The other side of it, I love what Brendan said with, being different and coming up with marketing. And, one of the things that we talk about a lot in my circles is that your income is in direct correlation to the size of the problems that you solve, right? And looking at, what we're assessing is, here's a really great stat. 65% or more of the US population has an interest rate that starts with a 2 or a 3, right? And that's a crazy number when you really stop to think about what that means and what it does to affordability, right? And so for us on the sell side, it's also understanding what's going on in Washington with some of the stuff about what could potentially happen with buyer agency commission down the road. And so we're putting a really big emphasis on listings and thinking about what are the demographics and the populations where we can help people and where we can start to unlock some of the inventory. Because Greg said it best earlier, sales are down, right? I don't think any of us are going to say that our markets are flat or up over last year. The buyer demand is still there at a certain level, right? People are still going to buy. We just have to continue to be able to bring the inventory to market. So we're doing a lot of work with demographic farming, which we haven't done in years, right? Taking out geographic and looking at truly the demographic side, getting creative with, I think in Boston, we were some of the first folks to put out some of that content around assumable rate mortgages and the opportunity that existed for both buyers and sellers who had rates that were assumable. And then just kind of looking at understanding people are still going to always move, right? And how can we just get super creative? What's the messaging, to Brendan's point? I coach with Tom Ferry, and one of the things that he says to us is, what's the message you can put out there that's going to piss off every other agent in your community? Because the message is going to be so compelling that every consumer is going to want to work with you, right? That's what we're doing. That's my biggest focus right now.
Yeah. If you're not being a disruptor, what are you doing?
I love that.
I've watched a lot of Lisa's videos with Tom Ferry, excuse me. So Lisa, thank you for those, because I've learned a lot from a lot of those interviews that you guys have had. But yeah, if you're not disrupting the market and you're sitting there, and again, you can't play the same game you played a year ago. The game is evolved, it's changed. And so just like Lisa said, we've got agents in the market that are not always pleased with us because they're going, oh, really? And then they get this ego on their shoulder. Oh, that's a scam, or that's a this, or that's a that. I'm like, you just didn't think of it. Don't be mad at me. You just didn't think of it. Right. And I didn't think of it. I borrowed it from someone else and played with it and, changed it a little bit and brought it out. So yeah, I think sometimes we look at the market and we look at our competition, and some people are afraid to take that first step forward because you're gonna ruffle some feathers. And even what she said with the commission, which I think is a thing that we saw on the front side that not a lot of people are seeing coming, with the buyer agency. Should they be responsible for paying their own commission? Should the seller be responsible for paying buyers' commissions? We've looked heavily into that and helped shape how we think the future is going to look, so we can be Netflix and not Blockbuster. But I think a lot of people are going to be having Blockbuster businesses here very soon.
Okay. I've got so many different directions. I'm also writing down future episodes. It's like Differentiate or Die with Brendan, future proofing your business with Lisa. I want to put a cap on the 2022 discussion and then come back and really dive into a lot of this kind of pure marketing stuff, as well as who's the buyers. But I mean, credit where credit's due, Greg. So I'm in the fortunate position of I get to talk to a lot of you guys and a lot of other agents, just, sort of being inside Real Geeks. And, Brendan, we heard about you're okay, the market cycle seems like it's overdue. Bob and Lisa, it sounds like you're really looking at your funnel metrics and fast reacting to that. Greg, you were telling me that it's about to change in November of last year based off conversations. And so I'm wondering, what I want to do is I want to give people a couple of tools that they can deploy when they're thinking about, the future, so they don't get caught by surprise. And I think that you might have been the furthest ahead of everyone. Maybe just give us a little bit of insight into where you got that information and how you derived it and what your thought process was.
Yeah. So what you're referring to is previous conversations we had, probably a year ago, and where I was kind of shooting off my flare gun and saying, listen, you guys, every girls, it's getting ready to go down. And so the consumer always knows after the real estate agent. the real estate agent usually starts to the average real estate agent knows the market's going down when they've got less closings. Okay, but a closing like that was eventually an opening, which was eventually a new listing, which at one time was a lead, which is at one time was a. So where's the earliest of the early key indicators? Okay, in my opinion, what we have to do is be great listeners. So back in November, October of 2021, that towards that end of 2021, we saw a shift occurring, and that was the shift in the frustrations of the buyer. And it was a shift in the boldness, and I will say the bulliness of the seller. That's when the seller bullied the buyer the most. And bullying meaning no appraisal gap, no appraisal, no home inspection. Okay, that was like unreasonable in my opinion. Okay, but there was a point where the buyer was like, I'm not going to pay over full price. Then it was, well, I'll pay full price, but in 5,000 more. Then it was, I'll pay 20,000 more. Then it was, okay, I'll pay 20,000 more, no appraisal gap. No,
with a 6-month lease back.
yeah, I'll do everything, right? And then all of a sudden, at the end of 2021, I started hearing buyers say, I think I'm just going to hold tight. I don't really have to buy right now. So we had I don't really need to buy right now. We started hearing that at the end of 2021, and we had not heard that for a year. Then we started hearing, well, I'm just going to wait. I think the market's a little too hot, too high. We started hearing the buyers say this. At the same time, the sellers were, I'm going to demand this and I'm going to demand that. So the buyers went from, whatever you say, Lisa, just find me one. I'll do whatever you say. That's what they said. They shifted from, I think I'll just kind of hang tight. That was the earliest of the early indicators. And I always believe that a market shift starts with when the conversation shifts. And then it just takes time for that to filter out all the way. And you should be able to see a market shift through the conversation around 8 to 12 months before it ever happens. Most people say, well, real estate agents should see it 6 months before the consumer. And I do agree with that also, but that's because the news usually reports facts, not a lot of opinions. And so that it takes a while for for what we see in the field to become factual. So that's why there's a lag. But if you want to be ahead of all your local agents, then you need to be looking at the indicator of communication and conversation, not actually traffic on a website or captures and things like that. All of that stuff will change after the conversation changes. So that's what I was talking about, Chris. I heard a shift in the communication, and then that's when I started preparing.
Love it.
The story was different.
Awesome. Okay. I want to steer us a little bit back towards what's happening now. Lisa, you had said a second ago basically your reward is going to be proportional to the size of the problems that you're solving. And I think that there's a lot of puzzle pieces that need to get put together in the market right now. And so that is one of the questions I have, which is okay. How are you attacking that? But I think my root question, or maybe the surface level question, let's go with surface level question on that, is who's buying right now? Because there is a lot of change in the marketplace, and you guys talked about the change in the quality of the leads, and maybe the leads that are coming through are excellent. So I'm curious of who's buying right now, and how are you solving those problems?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, right? I think part of what I have to look at in my market is the seasonality, right? We're in the lowest of the low. We got our first snow in Boston today, so that always tees off the absolute lowest of the low. So for us, we're actually, and this is seasonally accurate across every other year besides 2020 and 2021. We're in a lot of first-time homebuyer demographic, right? We're at a slightly lower price point than the average that we'll see kind of key up come April through September. And we're also still seeing a lot of investors, folks who are buying multifamilies and condos for rental purposes, because the other thing, I think somebody mentioned that they focus on leases a little bit, maybe Bob. there's still the one piece of news is that affordability is still tough, right? And so for those that are a little bit nervous about the interest rates or where affordability is maybe not where they need it to be, renting is still a really strong option. So we have lots of investors. We have a ton of first-time home buyers. Corporate relocations are still happening, right? And all the factors that always contribute to people needing new homes still exist, right? The nasty ones that we don't want to talk about, death and divorce, right? Job relocations, growing families, they're still there.
The fundamentals still driving.
Yep.
Bob, here in Texas, if we deal with snow, it makes national news.
Yes.
So I'm
we don't
kind
do
of
it
same
well.
question.
We don't do it well.
Yeah, no, we don't. Same question. You know, who are you seeing come through?
There are still people that have to move. Jobs change, people change, people, death and divorce, as you said. There will always be a move to another state or another city going on. I think at the holidays, it spurs people into moving. People go home to see mom and dad and realize mom and dad aren't doing so well. Let's move back home. Or mom and dad come to see the grandkids and wherever, hey, let's go live near the grandkids. Families get together at holidays and they move. So this is why I like to keep a house on the market during the holidays because, hey, while we're here at Christmas, let's go look down the street at that house. Let's go see what's on the market right now. I think that there's that constant churn in the market. I'm looking at, and this may be off your answer here, I'm looking at Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales were great. So consumer confidence is pretty darn good. Unemployment numbers are still pretty strong. Interest rates have come from the 7s to the 6s and now 6s down to the 5s. We've got people who with a pool of money who are not unwilling to spend it, and we've got a pool of houses we've been building up over the last 6 to 8 months. What's going to happen in the first quarter when those two come together? I'm pretty happy with what I'm seeing for first quarter. Will it be like the boom years when the sellers could have anything they want? No. I think to Brendan's point, you were talking about setting the expectation with your sellers. And one thing you mentioned was being realistic, I believe, in your pricing. And one thing I tell people is they want to price it like it was 3 years ago or 2 years ago. And, I tell them, hey, how much is gasoline right now? It's in the 3s. Great. If you have a filling station and you have gasoline priced at $7 because you think somebody's going to come in and negotiate you down from $7 a gallon down to $3, nobody's going to pull into your station. Don't price your house so high that it's 3 years ago. Price it moderately and let people scramble to get it.
Love it. And I think you're nibbling at the same bait that I'm thinking about right now. Brendan, you threw out the pricing discussion and, talking about ways to get, sort of some frenetic activity going. And so talk to us about that portion of your strategy.
Well, I think what Bob was saying is there's a bit of seller shame, right? Even like Greg said, I should have sold a year ago, but I didn't. Or I talked to my cousin and he got this, or the neighbor got this. So they're dealing with this sense that they didn't buy Apple at the right share price. And so a lot of our job is having to rebuild. I love that gas station example. I'm going to use that all the time. Thank you, Bob. But I love that example of just trying, how are we having these? I mean, we do daily role play. I know Greg's a huge role player. Our whole staff is having these role plays going. How does the conversation have to change now to make sure that we are able to present data in a very sophisticated manner that gets the emotional status of the seller to get to a place where they feel okay going, I trust you and I believe in your strategy, right? And it's hard to do that when they're going, you're sure, my neighbor sold at 800 back in May and you're telling me 750. And again, it's not what I'm telling you, it's what's happening in the market. We have all this conversation about it, but that's a huge in people's minds to go from, some of it's 150 grand. So how do we frame information to make sure that we do that? And then how do you train that at scale when you have a team? And because I think all of us on here, you put us in front of a seller and we're like, choo, 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 we're chopping it up. But I'm taking someone that's newly licensed. Sometimes I'm taking someone that never had to have a pricing conversation, a difficult one in their career. They've been in the business 5-7 years or whatever. So it's role play, practice all the time. And that's what's helped us.
Great answer. And again, I'm going to write this down for future episode. We're going to have you back in January to dig into that a little bit deeper. I kind of want to switch sides a little bit, because we're talking about the seller and their psychology and missing out, like all the FOMO side. But interest rates, I think Lisa, you mentioned it, are having a huge impact on affordability. And I know Greg, offline, you and I have had a little bit of talk about this, and I'm kind of curious from the rest of the group. When you're dealing with that objection of like, oh, interest rates are really high, and I don't know if I can afford this. Like, how are you? All right, Bob, hands up.
Last year, you were willing to pay $40,000 higher than the asking price to close a house, but you're not willing to pay $100 or so extra dollars per month to get the house now. Talk to me about the issue. You were willing to give away $40,000 extra dollars, and you lost that money the day of closing. Now, did you lose it or not? It'll come back in equity over time. You'll get that money back. But you were willing to give up $40,000 right away, and a 6-month lease back, as Brendan was talking about. And you would wash their dog, and you would mow their grass, and you would pack their kids up and get them to school. But you're not willing to pay a couple $100 extra bucks a month for the same house. Where's the logic there? Plus, interest rates have come from 7 down to 6 and 6 down to 5. So if you bought at 7, you could refi down to 5 right now if you needed to. Talk to me about why you're willing to give up $40,000 and not pay $100 extra, $200 extra per month for the house.
But again, just as smooth as Bob is, how do you train that at scale, right? How do you get your agents? So I just think that's the hardest part of all of this is that was fantastic. But yeah, training it at scale.
Yeah, that was a great one, Bob. Bob's got all the scripts today, doesn't he?
I know. I was
gasoline when I'm telling you. I'm like, I wasn't present to what you guys said a couple minutes ago because I was trying to think through. Bob's like, okay, I got to remember this one. So
by the way, this is 100% on brand for Bob. If you invite him in for like an SEO discussion, you're going to end up talking about guerrilla marketing. It's like, it's like, oh, that's not your issue. This is the other thing that's going on. So sorry, I'm sorry to derail you there, Greg. Hopefully you can.
One thing I think is important also is that a lot of the tougher objections around interest rates with buyers were the buyers that we were already working with pre-interest rate increase. So the new buyer coming in right now, they're not throwing up interest rate objections. It's still an affordability, but it's not an interest rate. So we don't have a buyer logging into Real Geeks or opting into Real Geeks saying, hey, I'm opting in. I want you to call me. I want you to show properties, but I can't afford it because of interest rates. Interest rates are not a conversation for the new captures. Interest rates are a conversation for the old captures. So I think that's something to pay attention to. Affordability applies, period. Okay, that applies, period, but not necessarily interest rate, And to Bob's point, yes, they were willing to pay $40,000 over full price at 3%. How about this? Pay 6%, but save the $40,000 that you would have had to pay overprice. Or be careful what you wish for. If you're waiting for the interest rates to come down to 3% again, what do you think is going to happen to prices? So,
right.
Can I hop in on that? Because I coach about 40 people across the U.S. and Canada, and I love to go into their websites and look at things because, that's how geeky I am. There are houses in almost every market under 100,000. There are houses in almost every market under 200,000, almost 300,000. And I know Boston, maybe not, but we'll find something. There may not be the house you want, but it could be the house you could get. And if you work remotely or you drive a nice little car, it could be where you could build up your equity over time and then leap into the house you want. There are properties available in niche positions and niche price points that could work. It may not be the house you dreamed of today, but buy this one, ride the appreciation for a few years, turn that one into a rental, and then get the one you want. There are opportunities if we open our eyes to them and we don't just go, oh, I have to have this house. Okay.
Right. It's trying to block our agents from the media because sometimes once they hear the media that the world's crashing, they wake up every day feeling defeated. And we're going, that's not the case. We just have to work and frame the picture in the right way. And the buyer's not even hearing half the stuff that we're hearing because we're in it every second. Right. I mean, 90% of our buyers don't even watch, whatever you're into, CNBC or, they don't watch any financial information. They're not sitting there reading the Wall Street Journal every day. They're on TikTok. And it's like, so sometimes we're already pre-cutting our legs, off half the time unnecessarily because it's all we hear because we're in the business.
I think that is the perfect transition to, starting to talk about 2023 and how you're prepping. So, I know, just like my perspective on this, again, it's a little bit more like corporate marketing compared to you guys. But, when I see a big change in the economy, and a big change in business, a lot of times I start to sense opportunity. Things are shifting, and it's, if you play your cards right, an opportunity to grab market share or substantially improve your position. So when the market comes back, or whatever shifts, you're in a more advantageous position than you were in. And Brendan, you started talking about that. So I'm kind of curious, I'll open it up to you. Going into 2023, what are you thinking?
Yeah, well, that's exactly why we rebuilt kind of our entire program, which was to take market share, just solely to do that. And we're having so many we call them agent partners, that are joining us, that were small teams, mid-sized teams, that are now becoming a part of Elite Home Partners, because they're going, I'm tired of fighting this fight of trying to build this small to mid-sized team. And when the market shifts like this, if you're not a ninja like Bob at lead conversion and lead generation, if you're not an excellent coach like everyone on here at the highest level, they're getting frustrated. So they're going, can I merge with someone right now and not have to deal with all of this? Still get to coach maybe a little bit if I want, and depending on how you build your structure. But what we keep saying is, let's consolidate resources. No offense to Real Geeks, why are 6 of us paying for Real Geeks? So, for certain people, when we can collectively work together. But by far, that's not their biggest expense. Usually their biggest expense is salaries and marketing, right? So I'm going, why are you paying this when we can all go into a collective pool? Let me do the heavy lifting of running the organization. You make more money, have less expenses, and we all win. So I think people are looking for that right now, and they're jumping ship from other places where deals were so easy to do a couple of years ago. And they're going, my expenses are the same. My deals have gone down. What am I going to do? And how can you solve my problem? And we go, well, let me explain.
Excellent. Bob, I want to come over to you because I know we're going to lose you at the top of the hour. But, I know you've been making some moves. Any insight you want to share with us?
So I'm grabbing market share like the rest of y'all. I'm doing it a little differently. I have a goal of joining every major MLS in Texas because I'm licensed across a very large state. And I have now started Real Geek sites in East Texas, Austin. We already have Houston. We already have Dallas. I'm working with a person who's in my same franchise group. He's a Home Smart agent as well. And he's got Shreveport, Bossier City, which is right across the border from us. And he just got into New Orleans. So we're creating this multi-state chain of websites that you will cross-connect. You won't even see the difference between the sites. You'll just click on Bossier City versus Houston, and it'll look like one large portal for you. I'm going heavy on the tech. And to Lisa Chinatti's point, I am niche marketing like crazy. I am demographic marketing. That's our whole business is demographic marketing because we're, very, very different than the rest of Texas. We're in a very red meat state and we're not very red meat. So we have a niche market that already comes to us directly. We're trying to expand that to the whole eastern side of Texas and grab as much of Louisiana as we can and hug them all together and get sites up that serve them, because I can outmarket other agents on the internet. And I will never probably beat Realtor or Zillow, but I can shave off enough that I can have a really nice business off of it.
So I love I love the two different perspectives even on Real Geeks. Like, hey, why do we have multiple agents, paying for the same platform, but at the same time, like actually we're deploying more Real Geeks to cover more geographic space.
But to Brendan's point, I'm not asking all of my agents to do that. I've got 25 agents. To Brendan's point, I'm the rainmaker, and I want to rain down enough leads that they stay busy.
Bob, what other technology are you deploying?
We're doing HomeBot pretty heavily and having a lot of success with that. Sitemaps, Pro Sitemaps is a great site for us. And I aside from doing the work I'm doing here, I have been doing reviews in the Tom Ferry system for people's websites. Anybody in the Tom Ferry system wants me to do a review. So I've built up stats on 35 or 40 different IDX companies, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and then trying to help those people with whatever on-page or off-page SEO they can do to make their site survivable, or look at a better site and see what they can do in their area.
Excellent. Okay. Great answers. Brendan, you kind of talked a little bit about like teams merging, like glomming together. Maybe Lisa or Greg, one of you want to talk a little bit about what's happening in your market. What are you seeing in terms of like the composition of your team, companies around you? Like what's that side of the business look like?
Lisa, you want to go first, or?
Sure. So we took a little bit of a hard internal look. And I think part of what Brendan said was, looking at expenses, and we had some hard conversations with agents that were maybe not the best fit for where the market was going. And, historically, I don't think we've ever done that. But I think what we're all going to find on this, I think everybody here will agree, and I think everybody outside of here is going to feel it, is the agents that got into the business during COVID who didn't learn the skills of a pre-COVID market and who aren't willing to now take the time to learn the skills, I think we're going to find them leaving the industry, right? That being said, I think that those that are going to invest in themselves, I think agents are looking hard, like to Brendan and Bob's points, at brokerages that have the skill and the bandwidth and the tools that they're going to need in order to survive the market. We kind of look at it from, twofold, right? I think the statement that your income is in direct correlation to the size of the problems that you solve. I think all four of us on this podcast kind of solve twofold problems, right? First is, how do we solve the problem for the agents who choose to partner with us to help them build their businesses? And then the second is the problems that we solve for the consumers, right? But what I hear Bob and Brendan both saying very loudly is that they're focused on putting in place the tools, the systems, and the supports to enable agents to thrive in this market. And I think that that's going to be one of the biggest differentiators for the teams and brokerages that thrive, that grow. And it's one of the biggest investments that we're making as well.
Lisa, you always have these like highly quotable sound bites. I don't know if you know this, but there's a little bit of lore in the Keeping It Real world about you saying that the holidays don't exist and you just like work all the way through them. Does that ring any bells?
Yeah,
I was instructed specifically to ask you if you still stand behind that statement.
100%. Yes. They're fake. We should all just be working.
Can I have another lump of coal?
Exactly. Yes. It's bad to admit, but yes, it's factual.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Back on track here. Greg, hearing the same thing, it's funny because I was hearing also Sasha Chapman's, who's another guy that's in the Real Geeks ecosystem and appears on our podcast. And he says, how does he say it exactly? He's like, you all are summertime agents and winter is coming. So Greg, I know you do a lot of work on this, like preparing agents as well as looking at your team. Like, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think, there's a quote out there from Warren Buffett is, when the tide goes out, you see who's swimming naked. And we're in that situation right now. The tide has went out and people are being very exposed. So a lot of shiny object teams or team structures or company structures. And in every brand and every team, there's some that are fantastic and there's some that are in the same brand that I would say maybe are not as good as they make themselves up to be. So I'm not picking on any brands or anything. But I think it's starting to reveal right now who actually can back up what they were talking about. And it's at a time where the agent is feeling the true pressure of a crash, because there is a real estate crash. It's crashing for the individual agent, not the consumer. And so right now they've got some big decisions to make. They've got to make some decisions. Are they going to learn how to do this the right way, or are they going to just kind of go out of the business? And I think that the correction that a lot of real estate companies or teams, the correction of 2023 won't be there'll be more inventory, so there'll be more sales. The correction will be there'll be less agents. That's the correction. The correction's more likely going to be there's less agents going after this smaller pie versus that we're going to make a bigger pie. That's going to be how we all correct, in my opinion. Okay. And so how am I doing that, or how do I feel? I will, what is my focus? My focus on is, number one, is empowering the real estate agent with the information necessary to be able to correct their course and gather market share. And the second focal point is to empower the consumer to be able to make good financial decisions in the area of their real estate holdings. And so but most of the time, most of my manner, the way that I'll empower the consumer is by empowering the agent, teaching them how to communicate a little bit differently to go out there and empower the consumer. And I think that's going to be the differentiation for me. And I hope my competition is figuring out what's going to work for them. It's probably just not going to be in that one area. They'll probably double down on things with money instead of actually doubling down on things that don't cost money, which is coaching, training, empowering, and things like that. And it's not a profitability. It's not to save money as to why I do that. It's like, that's the true investment we need to make to correct this thing.
So Greg, I think you actually just answered the question I'm about to ask, but I want to kind of ask it in a different way. So right now, we've been talking a lot about, like, yes, even though there's, this change happening in the marketplace, now is the time to invest in your business. And so when I hear that, I hear, like, ultimately taking less home at the end of the day, like profit margin wise, not even talking about like top line. So that's sort of part one. Is that explicitly what you're saying? And then part two, which is for the panel, Greg, you just touched on a lot of this, like, where are you making those incremental investments? Brendan, it's like, I kind of got the vibe there was a little bit of M&A happening in your market. So I'm kind of, for the whole panel here, 1 and 2, is it profitability? Are you investing? And then where is that action actually happening?
So my opinion is the best return you're ever going to get off of any investment in the world, in any area, is the investment in oneself. And so I think what we need to be doing, and what I'm focusing on, is investing time in educating, coaching, training agents. And that right there is not a matter of taking less profit. That's investing more time. Okay. Now, I do also believe that now is a good time but it's not about you. I don't think anybody should be investing right now to try to make 2023 be better. If you're going to be thinking of investing money, you should be saying, I'm going to invest right now to kick off in 2023 the first phase of something that you visualize being the path you want to be on for the next 5 years. So we should be investing our money for the next 5 years. Don't do it for 2023. 2023 might be your launch of something that you're just going to continue to build. Because if you're investing for 2023, very reactive to like what's going on in the market. We're building businesses here, right? So if I'm going to invest money and reduce profitability, it's not going to be to try to right the ship in 2023. That would be for a 5-year vision. Okay. Where I'm going to do most of my investing is going to be in my people. And what I got to do, I feel a duty to protect my agents from actually going out of business. So I'm going to be doubling down to protect them. In return, I'm building my business simultaneously, but I have this sense of urgency that I got to double down on my education and coaching to keep them and protect them and their families.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think what we found is that word real estate team or brokerage, and now I think there's a blur between those two names now at this point. There's hybrids and all these things. Yeah. What we saw is a lot of them were saying, come here because I have leads. Come here because I have leads. And I know everyone on this session, and including Bob, it is, yes, we have that, but that's not the only reason you join our organization, right? We help you build wealth. We have culture, we have community. We're seeing that agents, I'm getting so many people from other teams that were, when they were just buying realtor.com leads or whatever lead source they wanted to buy and just dishing them out like they were candy, they didn't have to really worry about the economics of it so much because you were going to sell a house. You knew that eventually that was going to sell. So I think looking at it now is it's going, okay, like Greg said, how can we protect our agents? How can we make sure that we can help them build wealth or at least sustain their wealth during this shift? Are we making them better people as well, right? Are we involved in philanthropy? Are we doing things that is going to help our community? Or are we just picking people on our, and we had to change a lot of how we hired, Chris, because it was like, some people were just not a good fit. You know, they sold a lot, but they didn't play nice in a sandbox and they didn't care about the world. So now we had to like adjust our entire playbook to go, hey, look, now we have these values and cores that we hire, fire, and promote on. And if you don't want to play that way, we wish you the best, because the money's not worth it. The money's not worth your attitude, your negative energy all the time. So I think it's a lot of, we've got to be very careful on how we hire right now, because even with this jump, some people are jumping because they were toxic somewhere else. And you'll see some brokerages just be like, come on over, we'll take anyone because we're desperate. And I'm like, hold on. Like, yeah, that person could come, but at what cost? Right? Like, maybe they shouldn't be here. So I think that's an interesting time too, is being, even when things get thin, being selective on who you partner with.
Side question, Lisa, you can earmuffs. At FubCon, I was listening to Shiplek talk about going really hard on recruiting and, kind of courting people that he wanted to bring into the organization. Is that something that you're doing right now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No. Oh, no. I mean, that's a big piece. So we have a full-time director of growth. His name's Soyan. He's amazing. And so once we had, you start putting these pieces into place, you even see it with him, because he's always trying to justify why they should join, right? Because he's like, oh, because, and his structure of how he's compensated and all this. And then we have to slow it down. My real eye-opener was, can I attract people that I know from the industry that have been doing this for years, that are just tired of the headache of having to have a small to mid-sized team? So once I really saw that niche, that I think there's a huge way that I can help. And if I didn't believe I could help them, I wouldn't go after it. But if I can go, look, I can help you and get you doing what your superpower is, because spreadsheets isn't it, or whatever their kryptonite is, or marketing isn't it, or running team meetings and running role plays and coaching isn't it, but you still want to be part of something, you can build it out so you have little mini teams on inside of a team, and you still feel fulfilled and you're making more money. So yeah, that's been exciting to just dive into that segment.
Excellent. Lisa, thinking about adapting to 2023, changes you're making, and then, yeah.
We're putting a bigger emphasis on listings. I think like a lot of companies through 2020 and 2021, as the industry kind of shifted. I had a very vulnerable moment with my company a couple of months ago and said that the really strong market created weak agents, but it also created lazy leaders. And I was one of them, in that it was really simple to show up and get a buyer lead, show up, write an offer, sell a house, right? And it was very simple to generate buyer leads at such a volume that we were able to close 1,000 transactions predominantly from buyers, and didn't have to put the time, skill, or energy into listings. And so one of the biggest initiatives that we're making this year is really, righting the ship in terms of our listing inventory. Also working on moving away from business with referral fees and teaching our agents, the basics. Again, this is everything that I'm going to with, what built our businesses. I think all of us, including Bob, who was on here, and most people who've been in the industry since 2015, maybe even before that, and maybe slightly after that, there were basics that we got away from, right? And the biggest thing is really, truly going back to the stupid, simple basics.
Brendan, it seemed like the referral fee hit a chord with you.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had, so, again, I go, when Zillow Flex thinks it's the smartest person on the planet because they spend a lot of money, and they probably are, because I look at Zillow as the largest real estate team in the country. right? And if you don't look at them like a real estate team, you're kind of silly. So I'm like, now I'm a real estate team with a real estate team. And Zillow Flex is a piece of business, but there's teams out there where it's 95% of their business. And I'm like, that is an unsustainable model. And the agents, after they take a lead with a referral fee, they're not doing anything with the future of it because they're not putting it on a touch system. They don't have those tools. They don't do all of this. So they're turning and burning these things. And then it also makes this toxic culture where I never wanted to be someone that was like, I'm a lead distribution machine, right? Like, otherwise I'd start a company like Zillow, right? Or I'd start a company like HomeLight or start a company like what have you. So I think like what Lisa said is, how do we get back to teaching agents how to build a 36 touch or we call them ambassadors in our organization, right? How many ambassadors do you have? Somebody that you truly believe would buy or sell real estate with you or refer real estate business to you. And then they always go, well, I've got like 150 of those. And I go, hold on, let me put it to the test. If you were to give me the phone list of each one of them and I called them up, anonymously and just said, hey, I was just curious, who's your preferred real estate agent of choice? If they don't say your name in 2 seconds, they're not an ambassador. They're a lead in your database. And so how do we build those raving fans, those ambassadors? And it's a process that we didn't have to do for a few years. Some that didn't have to do for a few years because the next lead was coming. People are selling houses at open houses like they were hotcakes. It was just a crazy time. So how do we get back to being relationship based? And how do you, again, help the agent learn that? And it's hard because I'll tell you the hard part is they're getting advertisements from all these other teams going, we've got leads, come here for leads. And they go there, and we've had several people come back to our organization. They go, I got there, got all the leads were okay or not good, or even if they were good. And they go, but now the leads have slowed down dramatically, and this team doesn't know what I'm supposed to, they're looking at me going, what are you going to do today? Right? Because they don't have that built-in training structure into it. So yes, going back to basics, figuring out how to build deep relationships. And then the hardest part for any of us is how to do it at scale. How can you have 100 ambassadors, 200 ambassadors? And it's just a model, but it takes work. But you're saving 25, 35% per transaction, not paying a referral fee out on it. That's a huge chunk of your income.
Excellent. So I think we need to wrap it up here, coming to the end. Headed into the holiday season, a lot of people are going to spend some time reflecting on, how the year went and, where they want to be in 2023. And, hopefully they take some time to, spend some solid reflection time, except for you, Lisa, you're just going to work all the way through it. But if you were to give people a kernel to think about during that time, where would you point them? And Lisa, maybe we'll kick it off with you and we'll go all the way around here.
So I just had this conversation with my team actually. And one of the things that I encourage them to do is that it's really easy to look at the shit that went bad in 2022. And I'm actually encouraging them to look at the things that went really well, right? And look at the things that they can double down on, triple down on to continue to build into 2023. And then have an honest look at what was the number one thing that if we changed it for 2022, it would have a really great impact on 2023, right? And it's no more than maybe an hour of reflection, and then you've got to pack it away and move on. And I know that there's a lot of folks who have some regrets, and myself included, right? Like I will very openly admit that I missed some stuff early on in 2022 that could have changed the whole outcome of the year. Reflected on it, made some plans, packed it in a box, and just ready to crush.
Excellent. Brendan.
I wrote down two, and I heard the question, and I'll just give the quick one. It's okay to get kicked in the teeth and fail. Like just fail fast, fail forward, and don't worry about it. I see agents right now talk about seller shame. One of our top producers in our brokerage, not our elite home partners, but in our Keller Williams brokerage, was like, last month she did one deal, and normally she does 6 or 7. And this feeling of like, you don't know, like you're done, right? Just this defeat. It's going, you got kicked in the teeth. You got to get back up. what you did worked, hopefully. Now you got to tweak a few things, so keep running. And then the second is I always think about these 4 questions, and they're kind of my questions every single day that I ask myself is, number one, what is my ideal job description, and am I working inside my ideal job description? That's my favorite question to ask anyone. Number 2, what's your exit strategy, right? So what is your exit strategy? When you're all said and done, what are you going to do? How are you going to get out of here? Number 3, how much passive income do you need to have on a monthly basis to make that exit strategy a reality, right? So when I'm unemployed by choice, right? If whatever it is. And then number 4, which I think is the one that a lot of people are missing right now, what's the system or model I'm attached to get me there? So I think about those 4 every waking day. So as a nugget for everyone as they move into 2023, again, are you in your ideal job description? Do you have an exit strategy? Do you have the number in your mind that you need in passive income to be able to walk away? And what system or model are you attached to get you there?
Love it. Awesome. All right, Greg, you want to take us home here?
Sure. Yeah. One of the things that I've been talking about with the agents in my office, and I'm challenging them right now through the holidays, is I'd like you to look at 2023 and look at who you are as a real estate professional, not as the participant. I want you to look at yourself as the observer. Okay. So let's take a step back and not look at ourselves as the participant. Let's look at ourselves as the observer, and in understanding that we've got to stop planning and thinking about what we like to do. And we got to start thinking about what we must be doing. And so the difference between a participant and an observer is the participant says, I don't really feel like getting up this morning and making any calls to get any new listings. I don't want to make any calls today. But the observer would look at the participant and say, no, you've got to do it because this is going to help you connect the dots between where you are today and where you want to be. See, the observer is always an I can. The participant, a lot of times, we're an I can't or I don't want to. So we need to step back and understand that those are 2 different identities. And I challenge people to look at yourself as an observer and step away from being the participant for a moment. And the last thing I'll say on that is you must get uncomfortable in order to achieve comfortable. And that right there will kind of be the one thing that most people will choose not to do. They'll choose to be comfortable today, and then they'll be uncomfortable in the future without any money. But what I suggest is you have to be uncomfortable today to be comfortable in the future.
Love it. All right. Well, I'm going to close us out on that note. So audience, again, thank you. Thank you to our guests. This is our last episode of the year. We'll be back in January, probably with some of this crew. I know that I've certainly got some ideas based off the conversation today. But, every year has its challenges. And so I just wanted to take a moment to share with the audience some of the gratitude that I had for this crew. At the beginning of every episode, I say, we've got a great show for you, or this is going to be the best Keeping It Real show ever. And a lot of that credit goes to the people working behind the scenes. So producer Sean is constantly killing the game, lining up these awesome guests. He did this without my involvement, just picking the best Keeping It Real people that we've had ever for the entire 10-year history. And so a lot of thanks to Sean for that, as well as running the infrastructure. Maybe I can convince him to come off camera, mute and wave, take a bow, that kind of thing. But there's also the entire Real Geeks marketing team. If you clicked an email, that was our team, as well as Olivia, who helps us select audiences or topics that the team or the audience will be interested in. So really appreciate all of that. Also, huge thank you to the guests. Like I said, they don't have to do this. They take time out of their busy schedule. All of these people here are killers, and probably could be doing something to make a lot more money versus sharing their wisdom with us. So I really deeply appreciate it. And then finally, all the listeners and all the audience, we wouldn't do this without you. We see your digital engagement, all the thumbs up and the questions, and we really appreciate that. And so let us know what you want to see, and we can't wait to make more episodes for you.